Councillors. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Nice to have you back. Are we good? Okay, we are good. Welcome, elected members, staff, guests, and members of the public to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 26th of November 2025. I declare the meeting opened at 17:49. The City of Busselton acknowledges the Wardandi and the Bibbulmun people as the traditional custodians of this region and pays their respect to their elders past and present. This meeting is being audio recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being live streamed on the City of Busselton YouTube channel. I would ask any members to make sure their phones are set to silent. And the prayer this evening will be read by Reverend Caroline Ball, from St Mary's Anglican Church. Thank you, Reverend. Please hit the press button and you have the floor.
Let us pray. God, our Creator, when you speak, there is light and life. This evening, we come before you with humble hearts as we gather here. May you bless this meeting and all who are present. We ask that our discussions may be filled with clarity, respect, and a shared commitment to serve our community here in Busselton and the surrounding areas. We ask that you grant us discernment to make the right decisions that encourage fairness, unity, and the well-being of all. We ask that you set aside personal interests and focus on the greater good. May all who make the decisions work together with not only integrity, but also compassion. May we be united in what is right and have the courage to pursue it. May the outcomes of this meeting reflect your love and justice. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate it. In attendance, Mayor Phil Cronin, Deputy Mayor Councillor Kate Cox, Councillor Max Mueller, Councillor Michaela Love, Councillor McNeish, Councillor Dijkstra, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Adams and Councillor Kennedy. No apologies, no leave of absence. We have one disclosure of interest on item 15.2 easements from Councillor Dijkstra, and that will be read out before that item. We now move on to question time for the public. Firstly, with item 5.1's responses to previous questions taken on notice. This will be on the screen briefly and be recorded in the minutes. We now move on to question time for the public. You know the drill. Mr. Sims, please. Actually, sorry, I've got Jane Bennett was the first request. So. If you can just say your name and where you're from for the record. Thank you. Thank you.
My first question is, can we please have a response to our email sent to the City of Busselton on the 27th of the 10th and then a follow-up on the 20th of the 11th with a request to address street lights that weren't working or aren't working on Queen Elizabeth Ave up in the end close to the bypass and in the car park between the Bay Life Op Shop and the Uniting Church on Kent Street.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. We can confirm both the emails from Barra reporting lights are not working in Kent Street car park and Queen Elizabeth were received. Work order has already been raised due to it being reported previously, and there was an oversight in not responding to you. For that, we apologise. The 5 street lights south of Recreation Lane are Western Power assets and have been reported to Western Power for repairs. For works in relation to CBD lighting maintenance involve complex utility relocation issues that our teams are currently investigating and working towards a solution.
Thank you. Number 2, should we be asking City of Busselton residents for their personal addresses to be shared publicly during question time?
Mr.
Thank
Seah.
you for the question. Clause 6.7 in brackets 1, the City standing orders require individuals to state their name and address before asking a question. In practice, the presiding member only requests the person's suburb rather than their full address.
Thank you. And number 3 is there a law on the Local Government Act that states public question time must be restricted to 30 minutes maximum? And if not, given the rapidly expanding size of our city, would you consider suggesting a limit of 30 minutes but being open to flexibility depending on demand and to show that you're willing to work with the community?
Mr. Seah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The response to this question, the Local Government Act requires a minimum of 15 minutes for public question time. Under the City's meetings, information sessions and decision-making processes policy, a minimum of 15 minutes and a maximum of 30 minutes is allocated for public question time to each council meeting. The community also have other avenues for seeking information and asking questions, and the primary purpose of a council meeting is to make decisions on matters listed on the agenda.
Sorry, just to clarify, so it states, I couldn't find anywhere that it states a maximum of 30 minutes is permissible, is that what you're saying? That section?
No, it's not an act, it's a policy of the council that says 30 minutes.
Okay, so it's not in the Act. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Sims. Please come forward. State your name and where you're from for the record.
Keith Sims, Busselton. Good evening, councillors, CEO and staff. And I only have one question. And it's really item 12.1. Just if people neighbourhood complains to the City of Busselton regarding noise, they're told to ring the police. Right? So you don't always get all the complaints. And the number of unhosted STRAs we have in Busselton is second to Byron Bay in Australia. So regarding 12.1, on many occasions via email and in this chamber brought to your attention that in the main, STRAs with up to 12 guests are party houses. They cannot contain their household rubbish in the allocated bins or keep their cars or visitors on site. My comments are from personal experience living next to an unhosted 12-guest STRA in a cul-de-sac. Not all guests are a problem, but I can assure you that many will be, which inconveniences the neighbourhood. And the previous mayor advised the city cannot stop people parking in the street. So my question is, why doesn't the City of Busselton change its rules for every unhosted STRA, or all of them, but especially them, with 5 or more guests, make it compulsory to have ×2 each rubbish bin and cycling bins at the owner's expense, and also make the manager's response far less than the current 12 hours that defies common sense to an effective half hour or maximum of 1 hour.
Mr. Seah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. While it's acknowledged that you have raised these matters before, it was not a theme that came through the consultation process when the local planning policy was advertised, and the council has only recently adopted the policy. I understand that was in June of this year. In relation to waste, it was not possible to mandate a property have 2 bins through a planning policy. However, AUSTRA approvals require an operational management plan which includes waste management procedures. The city does not receive many complaints in general of overflowing domestic rubbish bins, nor is there an identified trend of this being an issue with the AUSTRA properties. Should a complaint be received, the City has a waste local law that requires owners to take reasonable steps to ensure there is a sufficient number of waste containers and to ensure they are provided for all waste which accumulates or may accumulate in the premises. The City would enforce this requirement if there was proof there was an issue with a particular property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Simpson. Are there any further questions from the public? Being no questions, I will move on to items brought forward for the... Oh no, we're not doing that. Okay. And now we move on to adoption by exception resolution that the committee's recommendation for items 11.2... Sorry, did I remove one of these? No. Sorry, I've jumped over. I knew I was ahead of myself. Apologies. Item 8.1 is the confirmation of receipt of the minutes for the ordinary council meeting of the 12th of November 2025. Do I have a mover? Councillor Love. Seconder, Councillor Mueller. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour. Motion carried 9-0. Thank you. Adoption by exception resolution that the committee recommendations for items 11.2, 11.3 and the officer recommendations for 12.2 and 16.1 be adopted en bloc. Do I have a mover? Move Councillor Cox, seconded Councillor Kennedy. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried 9-0. Item 13.1 is the budget amendment for Hairpin Road and Ludlow Heather Green Road. This requires an absolute majority. Do I have a mover for this motion? Move Councillor Kennedy, seconded Councillor Love. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried 9-0, absolute majority. Item 14.1 is the event sponsorship programme 2025 to 2026, round 2 of the funding recommendations. Do I have a mover? Move Councillor Cox, seconded Councillor Dykstra. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried 9-0. Thank you, councillors. I now move on to item 15.2, which is the easement of lot 308 Prince Street. We do have a disclosure of impartiality. Councillor Dykstra, would you like to read your...
I declare impartiality interest in item 15.2 as I'm treasurer of the Baylife Church and Baylife Op Shop, which is located opposite the road from the easement area. Consequently, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider the item solely on its merits and vote or act accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Dykstra. Do I have a mover? Move Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Kennedy. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried 9-0. Item 16.2 has been withdrawn. We now move on to items for debate, and we move on to item 11.1. Which is the internal audit report complaints management. The committee's recommendation will... Yes. Committee's recommendation will go first. That was 9-0. Do I have a mover? Being no mover, the item lapses. Now move on to Councillor Ryan's alternate. Councillor Ryan?
Yes.
Do you wish to put your...
Do we have the updated
Yeah, there was
version,
just some word changing here.
please? Yes, the motion as put. Would you like me to read it out?
You may do as you've made some changes. Thank you.
No, that the Council receives the internal audit report complaints management and acknowledges the findings and management comments as outlined in the report. 2, extends relevant information to the community on the complaints management process via media channels. And 3, is given a regular update via the Council or the committee is given a regular update via the audit committee on the complaints received, the progress and action taken and resolution. All information can be redacted where necessary to ensure privacy of the complaint. Would it be fair to say that we need to put the committee, the audit?
It says that the council is given a regular update
Yeah, at the
via
top.
the, so that's
Yep,
fine.
okay,
We could
that's fine.
add
Yeah,
via the
okay.
Audit
Thank
Risk
you.
and Improvement
Yep.
Committee for completeness, but
Okay.
Question to the chair,
Certainly.
through the chair. Yes, someone's making that
Yeah.
amendment right now. So happy with that alteration,
Sure.
if that's accepted?
Sure. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Okay, a question for the chair
Point
as
of clarification?
well. Yes, did I just miss was the committee recommendation went first, did it? And there was no mover?
There was no mover.
Rogie, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor McNeish. Is there any opposition? There is opposition. Councillor Ryan, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I've just got a few notes here, I'll be quick. Councillors, in 2021, when I joined the council, we were told that there was a complaints process, but we only had 12 complaints through the audit report. And I think most councillors would understand that that's probably not true. So the process through the audit committee was changed, and we've now come up with a good solution, and I think we need to let the community know that...
Councillor Ryan, just you're addressing the council, please, not the gallery.
Let the community know that we have a new process, and that with point 3, that we just need to be able to... Councillors need to be to ensure that the process is robust, and that if there is any requirement for change in the future, that the audit committee can run that through to the council and make changes where appropriate. So nothing sinister in this, it's just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McNeish?
Yes, sir. Just quickly, a powerful message to the public that, in a governance sense, we are responding to something that's been an issue for the community for a number of years, but now we've got some resourcing in place that's been very helpful. And the data exists, so there's not too much to just flip that over by a push of a button. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. I'll be speaking against points 2 and 3 of this alternative recommendation. Point number 2, the city would already extend relevant information through their channels if it was necessary. So I don't believe that it is necessary to have this as a point, and I believe that there is so much information out there and people will get information fatigue. So let's just stick to what is important through our media channels. Point number 3, I have concerns when we look at our management policy of privacy and confidentiality. So I have concerns with elected members viewing some of these resolutions, that now committee members will need to have that in mind, that it's not just going through a complaints management officer. And also strategically, I don't think we need to get into the details of the individual complaints. I'm sure if someone's done a complaint, they would have contacted elected members individually anyway if they felt it important. So in order to have a healthy functioning culture, I believe we need to leave officers to do this work, considering the resources of this department are under strain. We've been struggling to get a risk manager, and I believe it can function pretty well without needing to look at these details, and we should just stick to strategically looking at them. So I'll be foreshadowing a motion which is exactly the same as the committee's recommendation.
Oh.
I'd encourage you to not worry about this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Cox. Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually concur with Councillor Kennedy on this one. Points 2 and 3, I think bombarding the community with more information on the complaints management process is just too much. I think it's overreach. I think that if the community want to understand what the complaints management process is, there are plenty of ways that that information is disseminated to the community without more detail on complaints management. Number 3, I also concur with Councillor Kennedy. I think when people make complaints, they don't want the details of those necessarily shared. Some people may be happier with that, but I would say the majority of the community, particularly if they're making a complaint against their neighbour, it may contain sensitive information and they may not want their neighbours to know that they've complained about where their rainwater tank's situated or that their setbacks don't comply. And I understand that Councillor Ryan has said that all the information can be redacted, but I don't actually understand if all the information has to be redacted because people want to maintain privacy, then there's nothing actually to read anyway, so it seems to me to be a pointless exercise. The officer comment, the City has in the past and intends to continue to report to the Council statistics in relation to the number and type of complaints received and time taken to resolve those complaints. I'm happy with that amount of information. I think it's concise. We can ask questions of the officers if we want more detail. I just don't think that it needs to be out in the public realm about the complaints received via the Audit Committee on the complaints received, the progress and action taken. I don't think it's necessary. Therefore, I will be voting against Councillor Ryan's alternative and support Councillor Kennedy's if this does not get up. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for? Speaker against? I will stand against this one, and only because my learned colleagues have made some very valid points in their arguments, and it does bring to mind when I've spoken to people in the community and I've said, well, we'll raise this up, and they've really not wanted it to become public in any way. The amount of, and I've just realised the amount of time it takes to redact. I know that when we've gone out to submissions, the amount of time, without even asking the officers how much it takes, would be incredible. So them going through every complaint, redacting it just to bring a report to council. I think both Councillor Cox and Councillor Kennedy brought some very valid points up about the amount of time, the impost on our currently very busy risk and governance team. So I would also be strongly recommending that councillors go for Councillor Kennedy's alternate or foreshadowed motion. Thank you. Speaker for? Speaker against? Your right of rebuttal, right of reply.
Thank you. Open, honest, and accountable. That's what we're supposed to be.
Sorry, and this is a rebuttal to?
Yeah. So what do you feel is important, Councillors Cox and Kennedy? What do you think the communication should... Do they not have a right to information and discern whether they should read it or not? I'm not sure that, I look at the paper and see all the information that's there, and it's information overload. A little bit more, and this information going out would be a win-win situation. It's a good news story. That's all I'm asking for, a good news story, that our staff have actually done what we requested them to do at the start of 2021, to have a more robust system. And how will we know what the complaints are in general? I'm not talking about an individual complaint, I'm talking about a collective of complaints. And how do we know how to fund, if there is an issue, will it need money throwing at it? So they're the questions we can be asking. And we heard today from Ms Pearson that it's not a problem. All the information is already there.
The rebuttal, please, not debate. It wasn't raised. So, thank you.
So it was actually raised. It was. So I think you raised it. You're talking about redacting. The information is there, and I don't...
No, councillor, please take your seat. For clarification, personal explanation, it was the staff's time to redact the information. I'm not denying the information is there. It was the redaction I was talking about. Thank you.
But that's all I have to say. Councillors, I urge you to vote for this for open, honest and accountable consultation, community information.
Thank you. Therefore, I put the motion in front of you. All those in favour? That's Councillor McNeish, Councillor Dijkstra, Councillor Ryan and Councillor Adams. Those against? Mayor Cronin, Councillor Cox, Councillor Mueller, Councillor Love and Councillor Kennedy. It is lost 4-5. I now revert to Councillor Kennedy's foreshadowed, which happens to be identical to the committee's recommendation by some chance. Councillor, do you wish to put your motion? Just you'll move.
Move it as
Your motion,
written.
thank you.
Yeah.
Put your motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Cox. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried 9-0, absolute majority. Thank you. Now move on to item 12.1, which is the application for the development approval DA 250640 in front of you. And Councillor Anne Ryan has pulled this item with the alternate recommendation. Councillor Ryan, do you wish to move your motion?
Yes, that the council refuse development application DA 25-0640 for change of use to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at lot 222, number 5, Ibis Court, Geograph.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor McNeish. Is there opposition? There is opposition. Councillor Ryan, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Sure. Firstly, I'd like to thank Mr Gaunt for his comprehensive email, and I offer the following to elected members. Schedule 2, Clause 67 of the deemed provisions applies to all local planning schemes in Western Australia, including Busselton's very own Local Planning Scheme 21. It sets out the matters to be considered when determining a development application, and subclause 2 specifically requires that the approver, in this instance, it's you, must have given due regard to those matters which include, but not limited to, the preservation of the amenity of the locality and public submissions received. It also means that the community submissions and broader planning matters must be factored in, not just the technical compliance of the proposal. Planning matters must be factored in, Amenity is the effect on the locality, including character, appearance and compatibility. The neighbours argue their amenity will be affected. There were 9 submissions, all against. The broader community interest considerations and social impacts must be considered. The community, left, right and centre, are telling us that we have a lack of affordable housing, let alone not enough housing, and too many holiday homes. Clause 67.2 is the legal backbone of how Busselton must assess development proposals. It ensures decisions are holistic, not just technical, and in the public interest. It also provides the framework for appeals. If a decision is challenged in the SAT, the tribunal will check whether the council properly considered these matters, i.e. the impact of the development on the community as a whole, notwithstanding the impact of the development on particular individuals and any other planning consideration and any other matter the local government considers relevant. The suggestion that should the council refuse the application and the applicant seeks a review through the tribunal, the city would need to engage a planning consultant and advocate should the matter proceed to formal hearing, and associated costs could range between $40,000 and $80,000. Considering there's already 3 matters in the SAT on Eustra, I think is a moot point. The Council Policy 4.1 is a council policy. It's not law. Council cannot ignore it. It provides guidance, but it is not binding in the same way as a planning scheme or the regulations. It must be given due regard, but Council can depart from it if there are valid planning reasons. Applicants and community members can and should rely on the LPP 4.1 when making submissions, but should understand that Council has discretion. Clause 67(2)(x) ensures that local governments cannot ignore feedback from residents or stakeholders. It embeds public participation into the statutory planning process. In this particular case, the submission from a small cul-de-sac matters for all reasons the planning regulations state. To ignore them as a tick and flick exercise is unwise. Staff suggests the policy provides clear direction on the city's preferred locations for such uses and reflects the long-term goal of balancing tourist accommodation with the need for permanent housing supply. I will argue that the policy is not clear, and although it has been recently adopted, should be reviewed by this current council impendingly. I believe that exclusion zones will push the problem out to areas which are not appropriate, as in this case, and no assessment impact has been done, especially in relation to amenity, parking, noise, etc. Other objectives of this policy bear discussion, but at another time. Put yourself in these residents' shoes. How would you like one of these situated in your quiet little cul-de-sac? Councillor McNish often talks about that words have meaning. What does discretionary mean? A proposal that does not fully comply with the planning scheme. The decision maker weighs planning objectives, policies and potential impact. I'm nearly finished. This site is zoned residential and a Eustra is a commercial operation, therefore discretionary. In planning terms, discretionary generally refers to decisions or approvals that are not automatic or as of right, but instead require judgment by the decision maker, in this case, again, you, using legislation, local planning schemes, and lastly, any policy to ensure that decisions are transparent, defensible and fair. Councillors, I'm asking you to use your discretion to take into account the wider ramifications and use a submission in your assessment.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Point of question, clarification. Councillor Ryan mentioned that there were 3 current SAT or Eustras sitting in SAT. Can you confirm if they are in a non-preferred area or a preferred area?
There currently aren't any. We've had 4 that have been through SAT in recent times since the policy came in. They were all in non-preferred areas and were refused, and they have all been withdrawn through the mediation process. None of them got to hearing.
All right, so there are none going through SAT that are in preferred areas.
Can I just clarify something, if I may? It's on the agenda tonight that you approved in the Councillors' Information Bulletin. There were 3 in the SAT.
Well, there's nothing now. Thank you. Councillor McNish, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I speak to the matter. I seconded the matter, but I speak to the matter. You can work out if I'm speaking for or against. Because I think the discussion is valuable. This is a legacy issue that's got called in before the policy was set. And now we hear parameters that guide us in our decision-making from a planning perspective, but also in a local government. The council is required to make its decision on the basis of merit and evidence. Now, merit, planning merit, we've been hearing some commentary earlier this afternoon, which has been very interesting. And of course, evidence is crucial to what this matter, well, I'm talking to now. So the planning merit talks about amenity. So Councillor Ryan is attempting to detail the specific reasons for refusal in a preferred area. It is now a preferred area that is not amenity related. However, in giving a 12-month approval, that allows the officers 12 months to assess the impact on amenity that this development could have. Okay, so it's a bit of a circular argument here, but on the basis of evidence of which the council must make its decision, the evidence can only be seen on what happens to the amenity after a year of experience, not the supposition of what might be an adverse effect to the amenity prior to the development commencing. So it's a little bit of a head case, but on the basis of evidence, the evidence has got to be real, not perceived. And to me, that is the critical matter of this issue. And Director Barber to be congratulated on isolating that point of difference earlier on today. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Local Planning Policy 4.1 was ratified by Council in June 2025, not that long ago. And yes, it is not a law, but it is still a guiding document and therefore should be given due regard. If, councillors, we start picking and choosing when to give a policy due regard and when not to, it undermines the weight and value of a policy and the ability to invoke it when we really need to use it to support an argument or a decision. If we say 1 minute we're going to look at the policy and support it, and 1 minute don't pay any regard to the policy, it creates uncertainty. So that's problematic. The aim of LPP 4.1 provides clear direction on the city's preferred locations for short stay uses and reflects the long-term goal of balancing tourist accommodation with the need for housing supply. This application before us complies with the policy. It's located in a preferred area. So the question needs to be asked as to why this particular application is being treated differently than all the numerous other applications that have recently been processed by the city, USTRA applications. And Councillor Ryan is asking us to give due regard to the deemed provisions but not to our own local planning policy. The deemed provisions are extensive and they can be extensively applied. They apply to noise, traffic and parking, character, submissions. I've tried numerous times in planning arguments to apply deemed provisions without a lot of success, actually, in cases that have would potentially create far more of an amenity issue than this one, and they have actually been disregarded. So I think that whilst the deemed provisions exist and they also need to be given due regard, sometimes they can be very difficult to apply. Exclusion zones were established primarily to protect the amenity of residential areas that have smaller lots and are largely residential, and hopefully, as a largely unintended consequence, increase rental properties and or housing stock. The boundary of geograph delineating the non-preferred areas for unhosted short stay accommodation, Ford Road to Guerin Street and Lehman Road to Marine Terrace. This area was proposed by Councillor Craig in June due to the fact that it is a less desirable location for tourists. The housing within this boundary is largely more affordable, with a significant proportion of it as social housing, and it does not necessarily contain amenities for tourists. Even if you change the USTRA boundary, there will always be a line, and at some point you need to draw a line to provide clear direction of where USTRA can be located. I would argue that Ibis Court is an appropriate location for Eustra as it is located close to the beach and to Port Geograph, an area that is attractive and desirable for tourists with associated amenities. Other local governments, such as Augusta Mugger River, have introduced exclusion zones with great success and have been able to mitigate amenity impacts on residents. Officers have taken a conservative approach with their recommendation, and I commend them for doing that in only issuing the approval for a period of 12 months. So if there are ongoing amenity issues, they can be addressed and reviewed via a re-approval process. Officers have also asked for the occupancy to be reduced from 10 guests to 8 guests. I mean, this home could actually potentially be rented out as a long-term rental, which some of the submitters pointed out. However, you could theoretically get a large family with many cars and adult children. You could get as many as 10 or 12 people living it who like to party every single night of the week. If you live in a residential area, you can never really be certain of how your amenity will be affected by your neighbours, particularly if a house is vacant, sold or rented in the long-term market. The question of amenity is what is reasonable, and in this case, they have 12 months to prove that the amenity of the surrounding residents will not be affected. And there is a method of addressing that if it is problematic. If Council does not approve this Eustra, which is compliant with the policy, it sets a dangerous precedent, and then we risk every single Eustra application having to be determined by Council. It also risks the Minister approving the non-preferred areas in the Local Planning Scheme 22. Because if we're being inconsistent with the application of our policy, it places a degree of uncertainty around the policy and subsequently the scheme by default. So, councillors, I would urge you to support the officer's recommendation and vote against Councillor Ryan's alternative. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox. Speaker 4, Councillor Dyson.
Thank you, Mayor. I support Councillor Ryan's motion. What stands out to me is that Council must follow Planning and Development Act, the Planning and Development Regulations and the Local Planning Scheme, and the mandatory matters in Clause 67, Subclause 2. These instruments sit above our local planning policy. The law requires us to give due regard, and due regard means substantial, proper and genuine consideration. It's not a light or procedural step. It means we must actively weigh the policy against the higher order planning laws and the actual evidence before us, including amenity impacts, neighbourhood character, cumulative impacts, I'm going to say that one again, cumulative impacts, housing supply and the effect on the community as a whole. The State Administrative Tribunal in the Abdullah decision gives Council very strong grounds to push back where these matters have not been properly addressed. The Tribunal made it clear that we must access under Subclause 67, Subclause 2, the amenity impacts, the residential character, cumulative effects of multiple short-stay dwellings. I'm going to say that one again, cumulative effects of multiple short-stay dwellings, the objectives of the residential zone, the impact on the community as a whole under Subclause 67. In this case, we have not been provided with those assessments. We do not have a proper analysis of long-term housing loss, neighbourhood character, or whether this quiet cul-de-sac can sustain a transient commercial turnover. And we cannot ignore the reality facing Busselton residents. Many in our community are aghast that they cannot find a rental or even a temporary place to stay, despite having secure work here. Local businesses cannot attract staff because workers cannot find housing. Schools have even had to withdraw teacher contracts because the teachers could not secure a place to live. These are precisely the community impacts that Clause 67 requires us to give due regard to. We must also acknowledge that the community loses every time a home becomes an unhoisted short-stay accommodation. We lose a home that could house a local family. We lose the stability of permanent neighbours. We lose the workers, teachers and families who want to live and contribute here but simply cannot find a place. Given the gaps in the assessment, the clear community loss and the failure to demonstrate compatibility under the higher order planning laws, I cannot reach the level of affirmative satisfaction required by the regulations. Because of these reasons, Clause 67 requires council to refuse the application when the decision maker is not affirmatively satisfied that the discretionary use is appropriate. For these reasons, I support and Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Councillor Dyson. Speaker against? Councillor Adams.
Well, I don't know if I'm speaking against.
Will you stand up?
Sorry. I can't stand
And,
up.
sorry, can you, Councillor Dyson, thank you, cheers.
Mine won't be as comprehensive as Councillor Dykstra, and I don't even know if what I'm speaking on here, because I think I have a foot, very rarely in life do I have a foot in both doors, but I just feel torn either way. I have a problem with saying it's a commercial enterprise, because I think if you rent a house, it's a commercial enterprise. If you rent your house out to someone, it's a commercial enterprise. So we can't use that argument. I think we've got far too many Eustras in Busselton already, so that's the other side of it. But unfortunately, on this occasion, I think if we don't pass this, we make a rod for our own back. And saying that, I say that without any real conviction, but I just felt I needed to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Kennedy.
The main reason I am speaking for this is because if we look at the planning policy, the purpose is to identify Eustra areas that will be, that won't be, and that may be supported. And so, and I want to clarify what Councillor Cox said, is that we don't have preferred areas. This planning policy identifies non-preferred areas. So it's not in a preferred area. And the main difference here between the Abdullah and the Belmont versus Belmont case is what I'm going to be speaking to next.
Sorry, Councillor Kennedy, I'm just going to ask for a clarification just before you continue on this debate. So when we say preferred, I'm assuming the actual word is allowed. Is that in the planning scheme?
The policy establishes non-preferred areas.
And therefore the other areas are?
Discretionary. But it outlines the guidance around the considerations that you need to take in an area that isn't in a non-preferred area.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kennedy.
That's all right, thank you. So now I'm going to identify the differences between that Abdullah case. So objective 3.3 of our local planning policy says to ensure Eustra is cited to preserve the residential amenity of an area. So I recall and I commend Councillor Cox because she championed that notice be given to nearby property owners when a Eustra is applied. So what that enables is a more specific, at a granular level, submissions to be considered from our residents to inform our decisions. So, and this is also confirmed in the Planning Development Regulation 67.2, as Councillor Ryan and Dykstra mentioned to. So we can see that there's 8 submissions from residents that live directly in Geograph, and that the amenity in this quiet, cohesive cul-de-sac values elderly, neurodivergent people and young families. So on one hand, we have that from the submissions, and on the other hand, we have from the applicant that they are an absentee landlord and they're there every 3 to 4 weeks. So we have to take these submissions, and we can't deny them or how plausible they are. We need to consider them. So, as Councillor Nish said, we do need evidence before we look at amenity, but I think that the values of even a cul-de-sac, as SAT begins to build up their cases, I mean, we know in modern planning a cul-de-sac isn't a great design because it can trap communities. So I think we need to really consider that. Also, what's specific to this area is that we have traffic concerns with the multiple triathlons in the area, and we need to consider that too. If we've got 8 people moving into this area, how many more do we have cumulatively? The next point is objective 3.5 in our planning policy. We need to maintain a balance of areas available to permanent residents. So since the policy was endorsed, as we heard in the briefing before, we've had 41 USTRA determined and we have another 23 lodged. So there is concerns that the non-preferred areas have encouraged concentration in other areas. So if we look at Old Dunsborough, there's a lot more USTRAs in that area, and we're probably not going to get the submissions because we have USTRAs neighbouring with USTRAs. And so that's reached critical mass, and we need to be mindful before they accumulate. So from this, we can see that geograph remains an area of discretion and due regard, and it can be seen in the submissions that there is a very active permanent residential community that we need to preserve. And we need to preserve that before there is a critical mass, similar to Old Dunsborough, where there is too many USTRAs around and no one's going to make a submission because everyone's happy that USTRAs are there. So I would be encouraging to refuse this development application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Speaker.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, may
Sorry.
I ask a question?
You may.
Point of clarification from Director Barber. Just looking at the submissions, I note that Councillor Kennedy mentioned that there were 9 submissions against the application. Do we know, I can't tell from the submission table, how many of those submissions were people living in the same household? Or were they all independent, different households that made the submissions? Given that sometimes submissions, there can be 2 people living in one house making different 2 submissions in one house, so it may only actually be 4 submissions against the application as opposed to 8, if you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I don't have that information on me. I'm not sure if there were multiple submissions from the same household. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Love was first on the...
I will keep this quite brief, as I concur with Councillor Cox's previous debate that I have very high concerns of undermining our own local planning policies that we've set out. But I will also talk to a few things that were raised on the submissions. So I can see that there was a number of submissions raised about noise and amenity. However, I do believe that this will be addressed within the operational management plan. Furthermore to that, we can see that the proponents have reduced the number of people allowed to stay here. They have set requirements to having quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m, which, if this was a long-term rental, I don't know about you guys, but I've lived on some pretty horrible streets where they're partying all hours of the night, and if somebody actually owns their house or they're renting through a friend or something like that, then they don't get kicked out, unfortunately. So at least via this, I completely understand the community's concerns over the thought of having these unhosted short stay homes next to them. However, at the end of the day, you could potentially get a horrible neighbour next to you that's going to be 10 times worse, because these have processes and controls in place that they've got a professional holiday home management staffing the place, and that is going to be contactable by the neighbours. They've got operational procedures in place for reducing their noise. They're not allowing pets there, so you don't have to worry about the noise of barking pets or anything like that. Parking concerns have been, I think, are adequately addressed with at least 3 car parking spots there. We are only allowing 3, but potentially they could actually fit 4 on there. So if people are like, okay, there's 8 people, potentially that's 4 cars, like there is room there that it's not going to take away from being able to people being able to access their own houses or the street verges or bin collection. And then, sorry, I have not prepared this. Oh, and comments raised by councillors and in the submissions about that there's existing short-term rental accommodations or tourism accommodations just down the road, or, you know, that there's too many and everything like that. That is not a valid planning concern. I highly urge people that it is not a valid planning concern. People want to invest their money into a property and it has the legitimate zoning requirements to do so. That is completely up to them and their risk of if they want to invest that money, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that is actually not a planning concern for us to base this on. I highly urge all councillors to vote against Councillor Ryan's alternative. I think it's a high concern to undermine our own planning policies and documents and strategies, especially considering doing the non-preferred exclusion zones, and I believe, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% across it, but we've tried to put in exclusion zones in our draft local planning scheme as well. It's going to undermine all of that. And we're already in an uphill battle against the state government with the way that they've unrestricted, unhosted short-term rental accommodations, like statewide with their state register, and making it a lot harder for us as a city to manage that. So I would hate to undermine our own documents that we've put in place to try and manage the state's state register. That's my debate.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Speaker for.
So mine wasn't too close.
Speaker against. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. And I suppose I find myself in a similar situation to Councillor Adams in that maybe what I'm speaking to isn't actually maybe how I view Ustra. But I think it's important to remember that the council resolved to do this just months ago. So this is not like an old policy. It's relatively up to date in the scheme of things. So, and it was developed in response to the identified issue or the growing issue that we're seeing with Ustra in the city of Busselton and housing supply and all the other associated problems that have occurred. So it's in response to that. I think it's also worth just remembering, I guess in particularly to clause 67, subclause 2, that was heavily mentioned in Mr. Gaunt's what I would call jargon-laden email that we've heard from Director Barber, that it seems to be, or my understanding of what Director Barber said is that the policy addresses the LPS, and then the LPS addresses the regulations, and by extension of that, the policy actually addresses clause 67, subclause 2. So we've met our statutory obligations. We've given due regard to the regulations. I think it's also important to remember that the whole purpose of making a local planning policy is to streamline and make a clear path and to make expectations clear and consistent, easy for applicants to navigate, and I suppose by extension of that, relatively easy or straightforward for officers to assess applications. Instead, look, if we have every Ustra application coming to council and getting called in, we're going to add unnecessary red tape and slow down decision making that should be straightforward under the policy framework that we've already endorsed. I think that the red tape thing's a big issue. I certainly heard about it a lot during the election period, that people want red tape cut, and I think that the policy does that by laying out the clear pathway with the expectations. If we want efficiency, transparency, fair treatment for applicants, then we need to let the policy do its job that it was created for. Otherwise, we undermine our own resolution and keep clogging up the system with items that should be handled through established planning channels. There was something else that got said, so I also, if I understand correctly, that the Abdullah case that's been referred to several times did find in favour of the officer recommendation. So the officer recommendation in this one is to approve the application. And also it was mentioned about, the elderly, neurodivergent, young families live here. I mean, is there an assumption that young families, neurodivergent people and elderly people don't use Ustra? I see lots of families. I have friends who have Ustra or however I'm supposed to say it. And there's lots of young families use it. And I think the fact that it's got 4 bedrooms kind of makes it conducive to those types of people. I also think it's really important that we don't just jump to the worst case scenario. The assumption that something might go wrong is not a good reason to put or to make decisions on. These are, we spend the time in here making these policies, and I think that we should put our money where our mouth is. What maybe is the thing that needs to be getting discussed in here, instead of this individual case, is that perhaps we need to revisit after a few months. We can already see some holes in the policy. Perhaps the policy needs to be looked at again and maybe tightened up or loosened up or be more definitive in what it says. But I think we should vote against Councillor Ryan's alternative and vote for the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mueller. Speaker for? Speaker against? Looks like I'm only the person left. I have to say, this has been a great debate, and you've all raised some very interesting and valid points. And I think Councillor Mueller's almost summarised it for me, but we also need to look at the stats and the numbers. And I do agree that if this is raising these questions, we've been commended for what we've done. I've been on council for 6 years and have worked constantly to tighten down on unhosted accommodation. I was the one, and even I'm sure someone in the gallery will back me up on this one, that tried to cut the hours of being able to report something back down to, I believe, in possibly 6 hours. But that didn't go through because it said it just couldn't be policed. And this is one of the issues we've got. My understanding is we have well over 400 plus houses being built every year here, and I probably would be more. I'm just looking for a nod there from the director. And therefore, if we are getting 400 more houses, already we've seen that our policy that we've put in since June, we've seen 41 go up and 21 have been thrown out. So already we're seeing a 50% reduction, potentially. We also have to note that 34% of our rates are sent outside of the area. So people are just buying holiday homes. So we can't stop them buying holiday homes for themselves because they want to live down here and they unfortunately have the luxury and the money to do so. So there are a lot of stats here that can all be thrown around and can all be questioned because we don't have those actual details. And therefore I think that is a question that does need to be asked, that we delve deeper into this 34%. How many of them are Ustra? How many are holiday homes? How many come down with more than 8 people or more than 4 cars and don't have more than 2 bins, etc. Because we are aware that there are certain streets and roads that are basically empty during winter and get very, very busy during the summer. And those, unfortunately, are not available for locals to rent. Those are people that buy second houses. This is therefore a state issue that they need to consider about secondary houses. This is not a council issue. We have done so well so far in what we have done in creating non-preferred areas. We've got the results already coming back that are showing this is working. We've increased the rates considerably so that we have extra monies to pay for rangers, to deal with complaints, etc.
Point of order. Relevance to the actual DA that's in front of us?
Well, everyone's been talking to the relevance of why something should be refused, and I'm talking to some of those other areas. But So I'm not going to accept that. I will continue. But I just want everyone to say that, yeah, I would suggest that we don't vote for this. We don't get ourselves into a point where we are undermining our own policies, and this is talked about later. So thank you very much. Councillor Ryan, your rebuttal.
Thank you. Why was this item called in? Because a resident contacted me, and it's our right to call something in. It's as simple as that. Anybody can do it. Any councillor can do it. I don't believe that this will cause red tape. I think this is a very pertinent issue to test, because I think, and I just want to clarify that I didn't vote for the policy. I declared a financial interest because VAS was one of the exclusion zones. I think we've created a monster, and I think what Councillor Kennedy raised was a very important issue. All we've done is protected VAS, thank you very much, and other areas, but we're saying that these people should be expected now to have those USTRAs in their street, in their cul-de-sacs. I think the whole system sucks. Councillor Dykstra tells me he's a capitalist. I believe I am too, and I think if you have the ability to have a holiday home or buy another property and rent it out, you should be able to. However, we are in a region that everybody wants to come here and everybody wants to buy a house and rent it out as a USTRA or a holiday home, and the impact on our community, we don't take into consideration the residential zone objectives.
Sorry, Councillor Ryan, are we in rebuttal? Because did somebody raise that?
Yes.
Who raised
so there's
that?
things that we don't address.
I'm just saying that it sounds like you're in debate. I'd like you to rebut. That's all.
I'll try.
Thank you.
So we are sending the prices of property up because, and the community, we need to balance the community in general. The Mayor mentioned policing. How are we going to police all this? For 1 year, we're going to, residents of Eagle Bay sent me an email to say that they've been notified and put in their submissions, but their submissions are just
Councillor Ryan, you're
ignored.
bringing in new information to the debate.
I'm just talking about the
That's new information.
policing of the issue for 1 year. How do all our staff police all these holiday homes? How do they do it? And yet we just continue to approve more and more and more. Councillors, we can make policies, we can change policies, we can throw them out. So I would suggest that we impendingly, as I said initially, we need to relook at that policy and how it can be changed, because what Councillor Kennedy raised was that we haven't created exclusion zones for, I don't know what the terminology is, but we've created a monster by
Rebuttal,
bringing up
please.
these. Well, I'm replying to
He
what...
spoke against the motion, or for the motion, so.
That's right.
He spoke for it.
So this is a huge issue, and I urge you just to vote for this as a test case and support the people in Ibis Court, because 9 of them opposed this development. There's only 8 houses in the street, so Councillor Cox, I think, yes, 2 people probably did respond from 1 household.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour of the alternate? Councillor McNeish, Councillor Dijkstra, Councillor Anne Ryan and Councillor Kennedy. Those against? Mayor Cronin, Deputy Mayor Kate Cox, Councillor Mueller, Councillor Love and Councillor Adams. The motion's lost 4-5. Move on to the original item. Item 12.1. The officer recommendation put forward. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Mueller. Is there any opposition? There is opposition. Councillor Love, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mueller?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't think it's speaking to whether or not we want, these things to happen or not happen. I think what's important here is that we stick with the policy that we have developed. And I guess I don't really have anything further to my debate on the previous motion. So.
Sure. Thank you. Speaker against? Speaker for? Councillor Love, your right of reply, which you have none. Is that correct? So therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? That's Mayor Cronin, Deputy Mayor Kate Cox, Councillor Mueller, Councillor Love, Councillor Niche, Councillor Adams and Councillor Kennedy. Those against, Councillor Dijkstra and Councillor Ryan. The motion's carried 7-2. Thank you. Now move on to item 15.1. The item's been pulled by Councillor McNeish. Just let that time to get up onto the screen. Councillor McNeish, do you wish to put your motion? Move your motion?
Yes, I do, and I'm requesting you allow an alteration when I do so.
Certainly.
The alteration would read, requires perhaps if you get it on the screen, that would be helpful. Thank you. Requires the CEO to convene committee meetings on Wednesday afternoons that does not adversely affect the council meeting or its briefing session unless there are mitigating circumstances. Full stop.
Mr Mayor, may I ask a question
Can I just get these words up?
with a change of wording?
Sure. Oh, well, I was just going to get the words up if that's okay, Councillor Cox. Just allow the administration, sorry, I'm just going to allow the administration to...
Circumstances. There you go. There you go.
Can I suggest the as is a...
Yeah. Can we just let the officers... Councillor Manish spoke quite quickly. So. As long as it does. So it requires the CEO to convene the committee meetings on Wednesday afternoons as long as it does not adversely affect the council meeting or its briefing sessions, unless there are mitigating circumstances. Councillor Cox, you have a question?
For Councillor McNeish, what would constitute a mitigating circumstance? Because that sounds a bit...
Thank you.
Yes, that would be up to the CEO because he convenes the meetings.
So as determined by the CEO?
Under the Act, the CEO convenes the meetings, which gives him the flexibility to arrange the time.
So the CEO would need to prove to us that it would adversely affect? And the definition of adversely, I mean, there was a circumstance raised, I'm not going to get into debate, but that if we had external people that could only attend in the morning, is that adversely?
Well,
otherwise we'd go to debate, I understand.
If you're asking me the intent, the Act gives the CEO the ability to convene. So if the CEO considers that there's an adverse effect in accordance with how he or she defines the word adversely, then one would presume he would make the call and make the commentary of why he made the call. And so you'd have your answer right then and there.
Thank you. Okay, so no further questions on this wording? So, Councillor Minister, would you wish to move your motion as?
As written, thank you, sir.
Sorry. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Love. Is there opposition? There is opposition, therefore, Councillor McNeish, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, sir. This was driven by a comment in the officer report preferencing committee meetings in the morning. And having been in committee meetings in the morning, and then having a lunch break, and then an hour or two before another meeting that may have or may have not been rescheduled, and then another break, and then to wait around for the council meetings, and we started having this hour or hour and a half of council meeting preparation. You know, I just thought that there needed to be a concerted effort to prioritise the time of the elected members, which is a pseudo-volunteer role. So if people had things to do in the mornings and, you know, had work or looking after children or whatever, they had some certainty about the motivation for the CEO to compress the time, make it more as efficient as possible. And then I thought, okay, what would drive the CEO in scheduling the activities on a Wednesday, given that they changed rather often, which was annoying to me, and having organised other meetings in the breaks that I would have to then cancel coming into town. I thought, what drives the scheduling of a Wednesday? And I thought, well, the council meeting, we'll lock that in because the community come after work and they ask their questions and it's a traditional thing. And then I thought, well, what's the next priority? Well, the next priority would be a committee meeting. And they're advertised well in advance, and some people would like to come, although we get less people to a committee meeting than we do to the council meeting. So I thought that that would be the next priority, and I thought, well, we'd put them in the afternoons as well. And then whatever else there was, briefing workshops and things like that, would then be scheduled in the next priority. Now, if there was a full day, as we've had today, and the workshop needed to be scheduled, we had to have the workshop because of timing or whatever, and that was perhaps a 9 o'clock start, well then so be it, we have a long day. But we would have the workshop, morning time's good, with thinking, committee's well structured, you've already made your notes, you come along and it's more mechanical, so in the afternoon that would seem to be fine. So it was just a way to raise the issue and have the elected members debate and vote on how they'd prefer their time to be utilised and scheduled. It's not a life and death situation, but I think it's good debate and would then give some pretty clear direction to the CEO about the preferences. And of course, if there are other mitigating circumstances, as there can well be in this industry, then the CEO, under the Act to convene, makes the call and perhaps nicely, would respect giving us a bit of an explanation as to why, which I'm sure that would always happen. So, yeah, it's just an opportunity to debate and see how you'd like your time organised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Councillor Love.
I'll reserve my right of reply for now. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question of
Point of clarification.
point of clarification?
Sure.
Can I just, after hearing Councillor McNish speak, I think I understand what he's trying to say. I just wanted to check with him. Does that say what you want it to say? Because the wording maybe doesn't seem the best wording for what I understand you to say after hearing you speak.
I'll let you answer that.
Yes. Well, I'm using the English language, but a reasonable man on the Clapham omnibus in 1856 or whatever, and Councillor Muir, you have inspired this alteration. Earlier in the day, you thought my words were too rigid. I'm not going to go there.
I don't want to go to debate. We have a defined question.
So, it's a bit on the run, but it requires the CEO to convene. That's under the Act. He has the right to do so. It's giving the CEO the guidance. Wednesday afternoons are traditional. I get that. As long as it does not affect the main game, which is the council meeting or its briefing session. And then if something comes up, gives the CEO the flexibility not to be locked into the rigidity of what was there before, because that was your concern. And he would say, yep, that's the reason. There it is.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a point of clarification for the CEO. Are you clear to what this means? And is it workable?
Yes and yes, thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay. Therefore, I move on to a speaker against. Councillor Cox.
I'll just rise. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll rise to speak briefly against this. From my point of view, having sat on a number of committees over 6 years, I'm not sure that some of these committees that Councillor McNish describes as bring your notes and they're fairly mechanical. I would agree with that. I think some committees potentially are, and definitely some committees are potentially not. And it would not be my desired outcome to have to sit into a committee meeting that was quite lengthy and did require some thought and discussion, and then have to go into a council meeting straight after. I think that that's quite a big impost. I would actually prefer to have that kind of committee meeting in the morning, then have some briefings, then have a break before you go into a council meeting. Personally, from my own point of view, I block out a full Wednesday, and I have done for the last 6 years for council. That's what I've just always done. If I have a couple of hours off in the morning, come in a bit later, then that's a bonus. But my expectation is that my full Wednesday is taken up with council duties, whether it's workshops, briefings, committee meetings or council meetings. So I'm fully prepared to do whatever fits in with the officers. If it's more convenient for the officers to convene these meetings in the morning, then I'm happy to go to oblige the officers. They're the ones that are getting paid the big bucks to do this. So I think that having this kind of rigid thinking that you only have a committee meeting in the afternoon, because it obviously suits Councillor McNish to come in at lunchtime, is not what I'm supportive of. So, well, evidently Councillor McNish has put this forward, and in his opening statement, he did say that he could see the benefits of coming in later in the day. So thank you. So therefore, I will not be supporting the alternative point 2 in Councillor McNish's notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4.
Procedural motion, please.
Oh.
That the motion now be put.
Do I have a seconder? Oh, no, I don't ask for a seconder. Oh, it's Councillor Mead. You can't do it. You've spoken. Seconder for the motion be put.
Can I ask a point of clarification prior to that motion going to the vote? Just to clarify?
No, because this is what's in front of us. So, well, I need a seconder. So, do I have a seconder? I don't have a seconder, so that lapses. So now, speaker 4. Sorry, I did. Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I'm going to speak for this because it makes sense. But why do we have committee meetings at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock? Because we've always done it that way. Why does this change anything that we do? Yes, you're a councillor. You're here on Wednesdays. We all are. But if we can have a more structured, sometimes I wait with eager anticipation on a Tuesday night to find out what time we're going to be in council. And sometimes it's not till lunchtime and sometimes it's 9 o'clock like it was this morning. If we can have a more structured plan, I don't think it makes any difference to the staff. They're here and yeah, they do get paid the big bucks. What's the difference? It would just make things more structured. I believe Councillor Cox sometimes has issues with, what's your name, Councillor Love? Has issues with children or whatever in a child. Hope you haven't got children yet. Just one. And that, you know, it's hard to get organised sometimes. So, and if we have an early morning committee meeting and then there's a space and we're not in till 10 o'clock, it gives you 2 hours, you've got to, I don't know, twiddle your thumbs or read some gripping report. So I'm going to support this this alternate. I think it makes absolute sense and I commend you, Councillor McNish.
Thank you. Speaker against? Look, the only thing I'm going to say is, and I do commend Councillor McNish for bringing this up, but I think it's great that we do have these conversations, the debates. I was just looking through the clashes. There are just 10 council meetings, committee meetings for the whole year that actually clash with council meetings, which is good to see. I agree. It would be better to have clarity on what we do on Wednesdays. I also agree that, particularly when I was a councillor as well, we are committed to giving our time to the community rather than just racking up for a few hours in the afternoon. But that's my view. But I understand that people also, there's some strong arguments that people who work can't become councillors because of the commitment of time. And a lot of councils don't start till 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, but then expect that a few of your evenings will be taken out because there'll be committee meetings on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So that is, again, something we weigh up with. The only reason I'm speaking against this is I believe that we, as a council, can quite happily sit down with the CEO, or we can decide when we want to have our committee meetings. As I said, we make the decision. So if we speak to the CEO and say, we will now only like to have committee meetings in the afternoon, I think as a council we can do that. So I'm just saying I don't want to tie this down red tape. However it goes, it will fall. But thank you very much. Speaker 4, Councillor Mueller.
Yeah, can I just ask a point of clarification? I think this question's already been asked, but if this motion is to pass, can the committees still decide to change the time at the end of a meeting, so for the next one? So if the following meeting is convened for the afternoon, and can they
if the committee decided that they would rather meet at a different
yeah,
time?
can they still do that if this motion gets up? Yeah, okay. I'd just like to speak to it quickly, and I think what's really important is we should just think about what is the intent of Councillor McNish's motion, and it is just to be efficient with our time and value our time. I think that's it. I think that's what he's done. Hence why he was kind enough to become less rigid and put this in there. So basically what we've got is we've got several options by which we can get around this, but it's just us using our voice. And as Councillor McNish said, my understanding is that the way that the council speaks is through resolution. That's all it is. The council's speaking right now to say that we would prefer it to be compact in the arvo, valuing council's time, being efficient with the staff's time, being efficient with everybody's time. And and it's not so rigid that we can't just decide, committees can't just decide on the day to do it. So, yeah, I can't see a good reason why we shouldn't vote this through. So, thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against? We have the seconder. Councillor, oh, sorry, you speaking for or against?
For.
For. Okay, you can speak for the motion.
Don't think I'll do this again. Can't be bothered again. No. Very quickly.
You can just stand up. I don't think the microphone will
very
still pick you
quickly. I think it's a great idea because it's a staff time as well. But more importantly, we go back to today. I think today would be one of those mitigating circumstances day where we did start early.
Cool. Thank you. Speaker against? Seconder,
yeah,
your...
I'll speak against.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
All right, yeah.
Sorry, I'm...
Because my... Oh, thank you. So I'll be speaking against because my motion to put it didn't go through, so I may as well have a chat. I think this is way too rigid. You don't need to lock it in via a motion. You just need to go with the flow, man. And if you come in the morning, if that be the case, and you've got a bit of extra time, that's great. We've got the council, the elected members' room over there. Just sit down, have a meditate, have a breath, walk the lovely streets of the city centre, especially if you're coming over from the west. It's a great opportunity to walk down the main street. I don't think this is very relevant, and I'd encourage you to not support it. Thank you, elected members.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Michaela-Love, it's your right. You reserved your right.
Firstly, I'll address Councillor Kennedy's amazing point of that this, in his opinion, is too rigid. I don't believe that this is any more rigid than what was in the actual report of saying that they would try and convene the committee meetings on Wednesday mornings. That's just my first point. Councillor Cox made mention about that staff are paid the big bucks and we should accommodate them because of that. I tend to disagree. All councillors here know, especially if you are just a councillor and not deputy mayor or the mayor, know that you're not paid very much and you do quite a lot of a workload for this, that I think it would be nice to accommodate us to come in a little bit later if it's not necessary to come in first thing at 9 o'clock in the morning. It also makes it more accommodating for young people that are still working that want to join council. We've seen now we've got a great, varied, diverse council at the moment, a range of genders and ages, and that's amazing. But I would hate for us to stunt that progress by consistently making it that it's a huge Wednesday day, full blocked out. I do agree that the Wednesdays are blocked out, but as Councillor Ryan mentioned, I don't know how many other councillors here have quite young children, but a 9 o'clock start is quite hard for me sometimes and cumbersome to get here. I always manage to get here maybe 5 minutes past 9 when I'm running, doing the race around trying to drop my daughter off to daycare. And I would much rather, I'm sorry staff, but I would much rather be 5 minutes late to a staff briefing session rather than a formal committee meeting that will either be held up or have already started before I got there, and then the committee meeting minutes show that I've gotten there late. And then I concur with Councillor Cox. I too sit on a number of committee meetings. I don't think that actually takes away from the fact that it is quite cumbersome if you're only, say some of these meetings I haven't had a chance to flick through on the schedule while we were doing this, but sometimes we do have 2 or 3 committee meetings on the same day. I find it quite cumbersome when you get here sometimes at 9 o'clock, you're not on the next committee meeting, and actually having just done a brief look, I think the staff have done really well to realign that. But when you start at 9 o'clock and then the next committee meeting, you're not here, pointing example, today we had a briefing session, started at 9, the next committee meeting went for an hour and a half. I'm sitting around wasting my time as well. I would rather, with this, it makes it a bit more consistent of, okay, committee meetings are going to be in the afternoon. I do understand it can be a bit hard sometimes that committee meetings aren't always mechanical, as Councillor McNish alluded to, and they can be quite onerous and go quite in depth. Certain ones, like your policy and legislation, you do get into the nitty and gritty of it. However, I don't see how that's any different from us doing a committee meeting at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, versus when we sit in for strategic briefings over our annual reports, long-term financial plans at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So I highly urge all councillors to vote for Councillor McNish's alternative. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McNish, you're right to reply.
I really don't have to say much, given that the rebuttal and the replies were all dealt with by Councillor Love, other than to say that we missed you this morning, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? Mayor Cronin, Councillor Mueller, Councillor Love, Councillor McNish, Councillor Dijkstra, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Adams. Those against? Councillor Cox and Councillor Kennedy. The motion is carried 7-2. Congratulations. Right. Is that it? I think this gets us to the end then. Thank you, councillors. The next council meeting will be on December the 10th. I'm just checking. I haven't got a back page. So, and I will close this meeting at 19:25 and thank everyone for their solid performance tonight. Thank you. Cheers, councillors.